Greetings, my dear viewer. This is a channel about marital infidelity and about the consequences if one spouse starts to cheat on the other. If you, as well as I do, support true family values and condemn cheating, then subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Let's get started. I want to share a deeply painful chapter of my life, one that still stings whenever I reflect on it. It's not an easy story to tell, but if anyone else happens to face a similar situation, perhaps my experience can offer some insight. It all began when my wife received an invitation to a prestigious corporate event, one of those high-end occasions where formal attire is a must. She was thrilled about it, but as the event drew nearer, her behavior took a strange turn. A couple of weeks before she started showing signs of unease, she was anxious, even suggesting that I might prefer to stay home and relax instead of attending this was unusual, because normally she's the one pushing me to go out to social events, while I'm the one who would rather stay in and tackle a to-do list. Her suggestion felt off to me. I reassured her that I was looking forward to the evening, and that she had nothing to worry about. But as the event got closer, her odd behavior continued. She was glued to her phone, though she didn't offer an explanation, and I didn't want to pry. One day we were driving together when I noticed she kept trying to disconnect her phone from the Bluetooth. Her face went pale and she just stared out the window. Something about it felt unsettling. A short while later, she left her phone in the car when she went into a store. I couldn't understand why she'd leave it behind if she was so anxious about something, so I decided to take a look. I found nothing suspicious in her messages, but then I checked her email. That's when I saw an open message with a link to her test results from her doctor's website. Clicking on it, I was blindsided by the news: a positive result for an incurable STD. It was like a punch to the gut. I couldn't make sense of it. Was she planning to tell me? Was she ever going to? We hadn't been intimate in over 3 months, the longest stretch we'd ever had without being intimate. The results were only 4 days old, and suddenly the possibility that I might have contracted it hit me like a ton of bricks. My thoughts were racing, and when she returned to the car, I saw an opportunity to look through her phone one more time. I opened up WhatsApp and found a conversation with a guy named Simon. The only Simon I knew was her boss. I locked her phone and quickly placed it back where it was. She hopped back into the car, acting as though nothing was amiss. She mentioned she wasn't sure where her phone was and gave me a strange look, but I didn't let on that I'd seen anything. I just drove us to the event. At the event, I hadn't yet gotten the chance to dig further into her phone, but we took our seats at the table that night. I didn't sleep with her, nor did I confront her. I stayed on edge, hoping she would eventually tell me the truth. The thought crossed my mind that she might be cheating on me, especially with the ST results looming. But I couldn't be sure until I got tested myself. I couldn't fathom why she wouldn't come clean, unless she had something to hide. As we entered the ballroom, my mind was consumed by this uncertainty. She set her clutch down on the table, and for a moment I considered trying to sneak a peek at her phone again. That's when her boss approached. He kissed her hand and expressed his delight at seeing her. She introduced me to him in a way that felt distant, and he responded with a similar lack of warmth. He then asked if he could have the first dance with her, though I wanted to refuse. I didn't. In fact, I thought this might be the perfect chance to snoop around. As they danced, I noticed the way they whispered to each other. Something about it didn't sit right. With me frustrated, I grabbed her phone and began scrolling through it, not caring if she noticed. When I opened WhatsApp again, I found a message from Simon confirming the time we would arrive. Scrolling further, I discovered their plans to sneak off together as soon as I went to the restroom or stepped outside for a smoke. My heart raced, and I looked up from her phone, seeing them at the bar laughing and talking. I kept reading, and the things I uncovered made my blood run cold. They spoke openly about their hookups and discussed their plans for the future. Then my wife revealed her STD diagnosis to Simon. He apologized for not telling her sooner, and she panicked, unsure how to tell me. He even suggested that maybe she wouldn't have to tell me at all if she just left me for him. My anger boiled over, but I quickly took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself. Then I used her phone to post the evidence on her social media. Their action was instantaneous. People started checking their phones, murmuring in shock and scanning the room, trying to figure out who had shared those messages. I included some of their conversations, where they badmouthed their colleagues. One of the guests rushed to find the boss, who quickly left the ballroom to deal with the fallout. With her boss gone, My wife returned to the table. She immediately sensed that something was wrong. Everyone in the room now knew what had been going on. She came up to me, suspicion in her eyes, and I simply told her I'm filing for divorce because you're not my wife anymore. Her face drained of color and she sat down beside me asking what was going on. I handed her back her phone and told her to see for herself. At first she seemed confused, but when she unlocked it and saw the messages, the photos, the posts, everything, her face turned ashen. She realized the damage was done. Her boss was likely going to be fired and her own job was on the line, and now everyone knew the truth about the affair. And the STD, she broke down in tears, grabbed her things and fled from the ballroom. I didn't chase after her. I calmly walked to the car, keys in hand. By the time I got there, she was standing by the door, arms crossed, demanding I drive her home. I asked, "Where exactly are you going to? Your parents' house, or to your boss's place?" She froze, her face falling. She begged me to reconsider, but I told her she wasn't getting in my car or coming back to my house. I unlocked the car, climbed in, and locked the door behind me. She began shouting at me to let her in, but soon her tone shifted to desperate. Sobbing, a crowd had gathered, and everyone knew the story now about her affair, about the STD. Eventually, she gave up and ran off into the woods next to the parking lot. I drove home without giving her a second thought. The next day, I had a doctor's appointment. 3 days later, I received my test results clean. I also found out that her boss had been fired. He fled town as soon as the scandal died down, but not before coming by to pick her up. They disappeared together. I packed up all her things and left them outside between two tarps. It was probably the most considerate thing I'd done for her in a long time. She never came back to collect them through it all. My dog was my rock, always there for me when I needed comfort. A few months later, I heard that she'd been dumped by Simon after 5 months. Honestly, by that point, I didn't care, my friend, and this is the end of the story.